Parshat Toldot. We begin reading in this week's portion of how Rebecca is barren. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any children, and so her and Yitzchak, her husband, daven. They pray to Hashem to bless them with a child. Not long afterwards, thankfully, Rebecca becomes pregnant, but she realizes that this is not a natural pregnancy. There's something different. She realizes this because she speaks to her fellow mothers-to-be, and she realizes that the pains and the kicking that she's experiencing, there's something different. Mainly because when she walks past a place of Torah, a holy house, then she feels a movement and kicking, and when she goes past a place of idol worship, she will always feel kicking. At this point, she doesn't know that there are twins that she is pregnant with. And so, Vatelech lidrosh Hashem, the Torah tells us that she goes to inquire of Hashem. She goes to the yeshiva, the learning place of the great man Shem, so that he can explain to her what is going on, because she realizes there is a message of what's happening over here. And he, of course, tells her that there are two children, two babies in your stomach, and they will be two nations. And Rashi, the great commentator Rashi, tells us, what was she inquiring about? So he says, Ma tehei b'sofa. She was asking what will be in the end. What does it mean, what will be in the end? What was she concerned about? She was concerned about the following. She realizes that this is a symbol of the constant battle and struggle that we have within all of us. The battle between the good and the evil. We all have a Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, a good inclination and a bad inclination that drives us towards doing good, the place of Torah, and unfortunately sometimes drives us toward doing bad. And so she wants to know who's going to win, who is going to come out victorious. And the answer that was given is V'rav Ya'avoid Tza'ir, the younger one is going to be in control of the older one. The younger one being, of course, Yaakov, he came out second, and the older one being Esau, he came out first. And therefore, Shem is giving the reassurance that ultimately Yaakov will win. The Yaakov resembling, in an allusion to the positive forces within us, are the ones that are going to overcome the evil forces. But it is going to be a battle. As we know, Yaakov did have a battle all of his life, and we certainly have a battle all of our lives, metaphorically speaking. So the babies are born, and they grow up, and their personalities begin to emerge. Esau is a hunter, Yaakov sits and studies Torah, and one day, we're all familiar with the story, Esau comes back from hunting. This is a very special day, as we'll see. He comes back from hunting, and he says something very strange. He says, Vayomer Esau, and Esau says to Yaakov, Haliteni no min ha'adoim hazeh. He says to him, let me eat. He was exhausted, and he says, let me eat from, pour into me now some of the very red stuff, for I am exhausted. What does it mean, pour into me now? Very unusual way. It's a very, to eat, you would expect him to be able to have a bowl of food and eat with a spoon and so on. But he says, pour me now. What was going on over here, we are told, is this day was the day that Abraham, their grandfather, had passed away. And everybody was in mourning, but Esau had gone out hunting, and he came back and he disregarded the fact that everybody was in mourning. What was this food? This was lentils. Yaakov is a traditional food that the mourners eat, the lentils symbolizing the cycle of life. And he, Esau, wanted to eat, but he didn't want people to realize that he didn't care about the mourning that is going on. So he says as follows, give me this red stuff. He didn't want to even acknowledge the fact that he knew what was being cooked. He wanted to show that I don't really know what's going on. And then you realize, but hang on a minute, if I get food, then as soon as I eat the first mouthful, I'm going to realize it's lentils and know what's going on. And people are going to realize that I'm being disrespectful. And so he says, pour it down, because if you pour it down, then he can just innocently continue to eat. And then he says the reason why he wants to eat in this quite unusual, almost disgusting way, is because for I am exhausted. And therefore he says, I'm tired, I just don't have the energy to sit and eat properly, please feed me. And then that leads to Yaakov saying to him, because he realizes this is not the person that should be given the rights of the firstborn to continue the traditions of Abraham and Yitzchak, their father and grandfather. And this is therefore what happens afterwards. Much later on, Yaakov, we have this very unusual episode in the middle of the portion where we talks about digging 3 wells. He digs one well and then it's blocked up by the people there. He digs a second well, and again the people where he's living they block it up. And then the third well, we are told he digs a third well, and it's not blocked up; it remains, and he calls it Rechovos, which means to be broad, to be plentiful. And our rabbis tell us that this is an allusion to the 3 temples. That the first temple, unfortunately, will be destroyed. The second temple will also be destroyed. The third temple, this is like the third well where we will dig it, we will build it, but it will never be blocked up, it will never be destroyed, and it will be called Rechovos, which means to be fruitful, to be plentiful, because please God, with the coming of Mashiach from the third temple, we will be able to be fruitful in the land, which is what he says, Hashem has enabled us to be fruitful in the land, and that is what the third temple will also bring as the third well brought for Yaakov in his time. He gets old, and we are told that when he gets old, he brings in his oldest son Esau. He wants to bless him, and he says to him as follows: Hine naza kanti, behold, I am elderly, I have aged. Lo yodati yomosi, I do not know the day of my death, and therefore, because of this, before I die, I want to bless you. Now, we could, of course, look at it in the most simple way and say he realized he's getting old and therefore he wanted to bless him before he dies. But our rabbis tell us that the day that this was the day before Pesach, Erev Pesach. Now, you remember that Yitzchak was born on Pesach. Remember the whole story when the angels came? This was on Pesach. And we are told that Hashem completes the years of a righteous person. Moshe, for example, was born and passed away on the 7th of Adar. And so Yitzchak knew that because he was born on Pesach, he was also going to die on Pesach. The only thing he didn't know was he didn't know which Pesach it was going to be. And therefore, at this point, when he became quite old, just before Pesach, he wanted to bless. And before he passed away, just in case he was going to be passing away on this Pesach, he wanted to bless his oldest son and pass all the blessings over to Esau. Of course, we know that afterwards Yaakov managed to get the blessings instead of Esau. But what happens, this is quite interesting, we know that his mother, Rivka, encourages Yaakov to go into his father and try and convince his father that he was Esau and cunningly take the blessings from Esau. Yaakov turns round to his mother and says, what happens if my father finds out, he realizes that I am not Esau? He's going to curse me. And his mother turns round and says something very strange. Rivka says, Olai kilolascha bani, the curses will be on me. I take responsibility. Now, what does this mean, the curses will be on me? So from a literal point of view, we understand this to mean that she was certain there was not going to be any curses. But homiletically, it's interpreted to be as follows. Olai is an acronym. Ayin Lamed Yud. And his mother was saying, I know that you're only going to have difficulty or curses from 3 people. Esau, Lavan, and Yosef. Not from your father. And therefore, just be confident and know that this is okay and this is from heaven. And in fact, later on, when his Yaakov's son, Binyamin, when the brothers want to take Benjamin down to Egypt, he turns around and he says, Olai hayacholana. He says, please don't, because Olai, he uses the same word. I've had all the difficulties from Esau, from Lavan, from Yosef, but I'm not meant to have any difficulties from Binyamin. And if you take him away and something happens on the way, then I feel that this is not deserving, and therefore leave him with me. And that's why the response, this strange response from Rivka, is Olai. She was confident that he was not going to have any more difficulties, and certainly not from his father Yitzchak.